So we're now joined by Tanaka Kutama. He's the CEO of Emobility Traders. Tanaka, are you with us this morning, sir?
Yeah, good morning. How are you? Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for inviting us to speak.
Fantastic. Tanaka, you are talking to us this morning about home smart charging and early adoption. Would you like to take us away, sir? I think it's interesting. Obviously, balances nicely what we've been talking about public charging and talking about home charging on your side. So over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us to this very good initiative. I hope we will continue to do this initiative so that, investment is not only financial, but also intellectually and educationally, because we really need to educate each other regarding this. In terms of the topic that I have, I've got a slide that I've just shared with you here. There we go. Just a brief introduction. Thank you. Just a brief introduction of who exactly is SimTalk and who are we. We've been a company that was established in 2011 as a magazine in the automotive culture. And then we transitioned to e-mobility in 2015. In Zimbabwe, we've imported plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles from Toyota, Honda, BMW, Nissan. So we've done a lot of tests of these vehicles since 2015 in Africa. And we're also a proud certified retailer for home smart charging wallbox that is headquartered in Spain. And we've installed close to 20 home smart chargers in Zimbabwe since we launched in August 2021. Then frequently asked questions that we've been facing since we started this whole initiative. Does Africa have enough electricity to sustain the adoption of electric vehicles? And what are the effects of load shedding? Have OEMs prepared for the transition, as there is only 8 years left? Set target by United Nations Environmental Programme. Are real estate getting involved in this transition for introducing EV infrastructure to their properties? Have learning institutions in Africa started courses on the EV revolution? And the last question was, what awareness programs have OEMs and private players introduced to increase early adoption? Obviously, the first question is, does Africa have enough electricity? Do we have enough power to upgrade? According to our research, the solution is obviously solar. Africa receives many more hours of bright sunlight during the course of the year than any other continent on Earth. Study states that Southern Africa receives more than 2,500 hours of sunlight yearly, which is probably an estimate. Due to the global changes of the global warming, probably we get more sunlight. Secondly, power companies and EV companies should actually partner up and come up with renewable energy power sources. Obviously, not a lot of people charge their vehicles in the afternoon, and a lot of people choose to charge their vehicles at home because that's where their journey starts from. Obviously, charging stations are going to come along the lines because of long journeys, which I applaud Gridcast for taking this initiative. For putting this initiative together. They've taken the bull by the horns because it's a big investment, especially in Africa. There's a lot of drawbacks people just bring up in Africa by saying load shedding, we don't have enough power, how are we going to charge the cars? I need to drive from Johannesburg to Cape Town. Is there enough charging stations for me to drive there? And then thirdly, load shedding is a major crisis. However, charging stations can be a source of charging the vehicle in most cases, and average affordable EVs have a range of 200 kilometers, which is enough for daily work use. So as I said before, like how Gridcast has done in South Africa, they can actually easily convert some of the charges into solar. So whereby if you don't have power at home, you can actually go and charge at the charging stations. So what we need to know is this load shedding thing is just an excuse for people trying to run away from EVs. I know there's an issue of range anxiety and all that stuff, but look at it this way. In Europe, they travel more than us in Africa, according to the research that we've done in the 5 years we've been driving. Because most of the time, people go to work, school run, shopping. It's very rare for people to go long distance driving almost every day. And then the second question was, if OEMs prepared for the transition, since there's only 8 years left. OEMs in Africa are slowly preparing for the transition. Currently in Zimbabwe, we recently opened up a BYD dealership, which is one of the biggest OEMs in EV in terms of battery development, and also high-end vehicles like your trucks, your buses. On the other hand, we've seen introduction of Audi, Mercedes, Jaguar, Volvo, BMW in South Africa, which also has been a very good initiative. I understand there's an issue of pricing. But on that issue of pricing, we should involve banks to come up with credit facilities that can assist people to adopt and buy these vehicles. Yes, the matter of pricing, they might be on the high end of value, but I'm pretty sure OEMs are going to try by all means to bring in vehicles that are less expensive for people to be able to afford. A technical backup workshop strictly for EVs and plug-in hybrids has been established in Zimbabwe, and I'm pretty sure in South Africa very soon we'll have a similar setup. What we seek from OEMs as advocates for this initiative is not only to sell the product, but have more awareness programs like popular brand ambassadors. I've seen Jaguar, they got Minute Lamini to get involved in pushing the I-Pace. So I think we need to try and get OEMs together and try and push through this adoption, because we don't want people to not to embrace the future now, because they will be definitely left behind. You have, like what the earlier speaker said, the Chinese companies coming in and taking advantage of this, and you don't want to end up have standards being affected. As you know, these vehicles at times, if standards are not met, they can be a danger because of the lithium batteries and all these things involved. So standards are also going to be needed to be maintained. Thankfully, on infrastructure, Grid Cars is arguably led by example for other nations. To be honest with you, they have done a lot of work globally. I think South Africa is number 4, number 5 on the charging station network, and we are also in talks in advocating them to come into Zimbabwe, because as you know, Zimbabwe depends on South Africa, and South Africa also depends on Zimbabwe. So we travel a lot between the two countries. So we want a charging network from Johannesburg all the way to Harare, from Harare all the way to Mutare. This has created interest from OEMs to launch EVs. We've been in talks with Hyundai. We've been in talks with Peugeot. Here in Zimbabwe, they are very keen now on bringing in electric vehicles, electric mobility into the continent. Startups from Africa. We've got startups that have been coming up from research. We've got Mureza and we've got Mazimbuko. They further increased their pace in production of EVs. However, Africa can also be a supply chain, because we can supply nickel, we can supply lithium to develop these vehicles, so that the pricing can also be lowered. Even taxes, they can be lowered if we start being a supply chain for these vehicles. This is a chance for Africa to thrive through this industry. Right. The third question was, are real estates getting involved in e-mobility? Smart home charging is indeed the future. As you charge your car, it's like charging your phone. And when you start your journey, your journey obviously starts at home. Property owners should now be encouraged to install smart EV chargers. This includes hotels, malls, gated communities, and Airbnbs. You might get a tenant who owns an EV and you would not want them to affect your electrical system, which means you have to install that smart charger. With demand of long-range cars, some may prefer to charge their cars at home overnight. Zimbabwe currently has 20 homeowners with EV smart chargers, which were installed in a space of 14 days. We intend on also building the first ever smart apartment, which will come with a fully equipped smart bi-directional charging station, which can take power from your EV into your home. So basically, you won't have that excuse of saying, I've got a fault. Your vehicle can also be your power source, which makes a big advantage for your electric vehicle. This will help early adoption as they will see EVs as not only a form of transportation, but also a source of power. Smart chargers that we have installed in Zimbabwe and parts of Southern Africa. There's the Wallbox Pulsar Plus, the Commander 2, which are very smart chargers, and most houses are single phases. So these chargers can do 7.5 kilowatt on an AC, depending on your onboard charger. Fourth question, have learning institutions in Africa studied courses in the revolution? We've got a technician here in Zimbabwe who's been trained for 10 years. He's from Zimbabwe. He was trained in America for the past 10 years. He's currently establishing a school, one of the first ever schools in Africa for electric mobility. In every introduction of a new revolution, education and awareness are key. Setting up new courses in universities specifically for this industry may help early adoption. Zimbabwe is currently working on an EV framework policy, which is going to introduce EV engineering in its curriculum. We are currently working on an EV framework policy, which is going to the later stages, which is expected to be in Parliament very soon to be adopted. So this EV framework policy is going to include education, it's going to include tax incentives, it's going to include distinguishing a petrol car and an EV on the number plate. And think it's also going to help in us seeing how many people have bought in these vehicles, how many people have bought these cars. Training of first responders, technicians, safety, and EV chargers attendants is also key. We'll need to train people to know how to respond to an accident on an EV, how to respond to a technical issue to a charging station or to a vehicle. Zimbabwe is set to launch a technical school led by Master Tech Tauraisiwe, who has all the credentials in high voltage systems. The school is going to be called International Institution of Automotive Technology Training, which is going to be open to anyone from Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, anyone. And it's going to be accredited by ASE and ACDC. What awareness programs have OEMs and private players introduced to increase early adoption? Work with influential people. As I said before, the more we work with influential people to give education and awareness regarding e-mobility, the easier it is for us. We have the chance to be on the same pace as Europe, but the problem is there's resistance of the one excuse, which is load shedding, obviously, and pricing. Pricing, every car is expensive. Even if you're buying a Polo, when you start buying it, you start saying my car is expensive. But in the long run, you start seeing the advantages of owning a car. Like an electric vehicle is more viable and practical to own in Africa than any other car. Number one, the costs are low. Number two, you realize your return on investment probably after a year, considering how much fuel is going up. I think fuel now is going about 19 Rand a liter. Here in Zimbabwe, we're paying like $1.45 per liter. Discuss ways of power generations with relevant authorities. This is whereby the government has to come in to say, look, power authorities, big industries, can you have solar systems? Can you have different types of renewable energy production, such as your hydro? You can actually start recycling a lot of hydro power. You can do wind. There's a lot of options for renewable energy that can charge these vehicles, that can increase the grid. Like in Zimbabwe, we've got what we call grid tied, whereby if you have a solar system, if you have excess power from your solar system, you can send it back to the grid. And what they do is they'll pay you units to use in your house. So basically, those units maybe you paid for, you can use it to charge your vehicle. Introduce incentives for short period for launch date. OEMs, private players, can come up with their own incentives. It won't harm you to have to put aside 500 Rand to say, look, if you buy an EV for the whole year, you can charge for free. Here's your card. We've paid grid cards already. Here's your card. Or your insurance premium has been low. Because remember, these vehicles are not going to depreciate value. Some are going to appreciate a bit of value because of demand. Obviously, certain petroleum firms will see it as a market killer, but engage and educate them regarding this transition. I've been in talks with Total, and they are very keen on this rollout plan for EVs, because they are seeing that is where we are going. The environment is where we're going. COVID actually taught us that we need to take care of the environment, because after COVID, COVID was like nature was biting back at us for not taking care of it. So these are the chances that we need to take advantage of. Renewable energy and electric vehicles. We drive a lot. Let's reduce emissions on that. And then regulations to present to relevant authorities to also assist the grey market, which carries a share percentage of the motoring industry. As you know, if OEMs fail to have good pricing, people are going to tend to importing the vehicles on their own, either South Africa, Namibia, or Zimbabwe, which will then affect the OEMs because they're not transiting quickly. So let's say if Toyota doesn't manage to launch the vehicle as early as they can, someone is just going to go and import the car on their own. So there need to be regulations to state that, look, an OEM, if they don't launch an EV by this certain time period, they'll be penalized this much, or they have to pay such a tax incentive on the environment. Thank you very much. That is my presentation for today.
So Tanaka, I think, obviously you've touched on a number of topics there. I've got quite a few questions coming in. You obviously aren't, dare I say, you aren't shy to touch on some big topics,
stuff, yeah.
Maybe a few controversial topics. So I'm gonna. We know it's open forum. We're gonna hit you where it hurts. That last comment that you made, where you say people will import cars themselves. Let's just touch on that. The reality is that importing a car yourself is a highly, highly expensive operation, time consuming, requires a lot of knowledge, to get the vehicle registered when it's not homologated onto the systems of the country. Do you really see that being the case? I mean, is that just not, with respect, a bit of a pipe dream? I mean, to import a vehicle yourself is almost doubles the cost of the vehicle at the end of the day.
Look, at the end of the day, it's like the Rubicon Tesla story. I think I was following it since it started. At the end of the day, when someone really wants something, they'll find a way to bring it in. They will try their best to, you know what, they won't probably look at the cost, but they'll say, look, I have to bring it in. Because at the end of the day, the current situation in the industry is not being conducive. Just imagine if the United Nations just says maybe in 2025, we don't want internal combustion vehicles. How are you going to commute? While the OEM is still saying, look, we are waiting for the head office to tell us to launch a vehicle. So this is where the case I said, this is where the case I said to regulations really need to be put onto the OEMs so that there's customer protection as well. Because at the end of the day, people will find a way to bring in the vehicles. They will find a way. These regulations, these import regulations that were put, they were put for a reason. But obviously, people will apply and they'll do it. There's a Tesla right now in South Africa. There's a Tesla here in Zimbabwe. But as you know, Tesla is over-the-air software updates, but it's gridlocked. You can't register it in Africa at the moment. It's only you can register it in Europe and America. So, but still, we still have Teslas in Africa. Sure. So, as I said to you, people will still find a way.
Yeah. So I think George has some interesting input. I mean, obviously he's an auto trader. He works in the sector. George, your inputs?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be difficult, Tanaka, to import a vehicle, especially with the current regulation. You know, that Tesla that was imported, the Model X. You know, pretty much if you speak to them, cost double the price of the car. You know, I think the end price of the car was almost close to 3 million rand. You know, after import duties and you know, getting it here. But that aside, there's an interesting kind of line that is a consequence of what Tanaka is talking about, and that is, if we don't get this right, you know, Tanaka's right, there's big risk, but if we don't get this right, we may be relegated to one of two paths. And the one path is becoming another Australia. Yeah. Australia does not assemble or manufacture cars anymore, so we could just import all of our cars as a country. The other is the example of Brazil. Brazil stayed with old technology for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, I think made the old Combi, I don't know if you remember the VW Combi, for way after the rest of the world left the Combi behind.
Sure.
You know, so we've got to be careful as a country and as Africa that we don't become the manufacturing plant using old technology and be the dumping ground of ICE vehicles.
Yeah, which I think everyone would like to avoid. I mean, no one wants that for Africa or our environment. Tanaka, again, I mean, you touched on a lot of points. I think, guys, congratulating you that there's a focus on training in Zimbabwe, obviously our northern neighbor here in South Africa. I'm going to touch on one, and I think it's maybe a point where you mentioned quality issues with Asian vehicles. Now, I know maybe historically people talk about quality and European, but I think the reality is that if we look at the stuff that's coming out of China and some of the vehicles, and even George was alluding to
Jolian.
Yeah, the Jolian. Is that not maybe with respect a personal viewpoint? Because I think some of the quality coming out of China is of a high enough level that that's what we need to look to, because very few people within Africa can afford dollar-based or European-based cars and buying it in. If we want to get mass adoption, dare I say, the question is, and I'm going to ask you directly, the question is, can Tanaka back up the statement about Asian vehicles being of a low quality?
Not necessarily saying it's a low quality. I'm saying, look, it's a matter of preference. As you know, Chinese cars, I've driven a BYD E6. To be honest with you, the quality is out of this world. But as you know, there's this perspective of quality coming to Africa is different quality going elsewhere, right? So standards are a bit different. You know, there's tests that's been done. You'd find that the phone you use from China and the phone you bought from Europe probably are different, because it's a different market that they're targeting. Africa, they obviously know it's more of affordability. Europe is more of high standard quality. So it's I can't say it's cheap quality. I'm just trying to say, look, we have to also be careful of that because of demand. They're going to realize that there's a lot of demand and they have to push volumes. As you know, in the motoring industry, it's more volumes, more than high profit margins. They have to push volumes. So China, the Haval, the GWM, like the P series, look how good it has been doing because of pricing, and they've been managed to meet the volumes and the demand that's there, which is probably Toyota, because of the chip shortage, they have failed. So this is something we also have to look at in the e-mobility industry, because you don't want a certain vehicle coming in quickly assembled, and the battery probably is not put in together, and then start have cars blowing up or something like that. You don't want a situation like that. But also we have to engage the Chinese companies. They can come and assemble the vehicles in Africa. Like what he was saying, we don't want to have old technology manufacturing these vehicles. So at the end of the day, I'm not really saying it's cheap quality, but we just have to be careful of the type of quality of vehicles we're going to be receiving in Africa.
I mean, I think those are valid points, but a little bit of a different kind of topic, and you touched on it earlier on, Tanaka, and that is vehicle-to-grid charging, or vehicle-to-grid sales of electricity. We touched on it briefly a little bit earlier on with Josh, but I'm going to ask you the question because you raised it in your presentation, and that is OEMs don't particularly like vehicle-to-grid because it ramps up the charging cycle of the car, which then leads to faster battery degradation. How do you see the solution to this?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we have power issues that we face. And when there's a power cut, you've got lithium batteries worth 100 kilowatts sitting outside, and you've got a bi-directional charger at your house. At the end of the day, you're still going to take power from the vehicle. I understand there's a warranty issue that you'll be facing, but look at it this way. The Nissan Leaf currently, from the generation 1 to the current generation, they allow you to do vehicle to grid. They're actually in promoting that system because they know in certain countries it will come to work, it will come to pass. And for early adoption, it will help them push their vehicles. Because after maybe 5 or 6 years, you can still change the battery, you can buy a new battery. And the old battery, you can put it somewhere as a power storage source. Even BYD currently are also doing the vehicle to grid system. So at the end of the day, I understand some OEMs will say, look, our batteries will degrade quickly and all that, but some OEMs are actually promoting it. Like here in Zimbabwe, everyone who's got a Nissan Leaf right now, they do vehicle to grid. And at the end of the day, they say, look, after the battery is gone, I can still buy another battery, and I've got another 8 to 6 years to go with it. But I know I've got extra power source. If I'm not driving my car, if there's a power fault, I can use my vehicle. So I think OEMs also need to have a bit of research and development on that, because it's going to work in certain continents like Brazil, Cuba, all those countries that are, that get affected by the dangerous weather. Like even in Africa, we face a lot of power cuts. For me to buy an electric vehicle, it's no longer about being mobile. It's for me to say, okay, look, I don't have power. Let me take power from my car.
I'm all for vehicle to grid.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we are as well.
I think we've got to solve it, and it is a current challenge, and I think it's a brilliant initiative to get vehicle to grid going.
Yeah. Now, Tanaka, let's talk. I mean, obviously, you're based in Zimbabwe. What do you see, and maybe passing thoughts before we leave you for the day, and thank you for joining us. What do you see the biggest challenges in Zimbabwe? Obviously, we've spoken about vehicle adoption. If you could flick one switch, let's say one switch in Zimbabwe to increase EV uptake, specifically in Zimbabwe. Let's ignore South Africa and Namibia, but your home country. What is the one thing that you feel has to change in order to see more EVs on the road in your country?
Well, basically, it's tax. If there's tax relaxation on licensing, tax relaxation on duties, or tax relaxation on everything to do with importing an EV or manufacturing EV, I feel there will be early adoption, because EVs, it's pricing. Everyone wants an electric vehicle, to be honest with you. Even in this country, right now, we've got a demand of maybe 100 to 200 people. The government already has bought about 10. Our regulatory authorities got 1. So it's only pricing that's affecting people from not buying. But everyone wants an electric vehicle, because number one, we face challenges of the fuel price. It's just too high sometimes because we import the fuel. And secondly, sometimes availability of fuel is a crisis sometimes. So everyone wants an electric vehicle, because right now, I think 40% of our market share right now, they're driving hybrids. So the transition from hybrid to electric is going to be very easy for us.
Fantastic. So Tanaka, from my side and everyone at IMSA, thank you very much for taking the time. It's been very interesting to hear your views and perspectives. Obviously, not shy to touch on a few sensitive topics, which is always nice to have a speaker who boldly goes. And thank you very much for taking the time and joining us this morning all the way from Zimbabwe. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you very much.